Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. All right, folks, welcome back to the Stoic Responder Podcast. This is episode 20. Bread and circuses. Hey, if you look at the date on the calendar, you know why I'm calling this episode Bread and Circuses, because tonight, June 27th, is the first presidential debate. If that feels super early to you, it's because it is. Normally, these things don't happen until after the nominating conventions, but for some reason, we've decided to just extend the presidential race into a perpetual cycle. And so I thought it would be a good podcast episode, not getting into the politics of it, but just getting into the entertainment of it and kind of relay that back to the Roman Empire. But before we get into that, I got two shout outs I want to give. Number one, if you look at my hat, if you're watching this on YouTube, Blue Badge Coffee Company. I'm wearing their hat right now. The mission of Blue Badge Coffee Company is to provide customers with the absolute best, highest quality premium coffee that money can buy. They take a portion of each sale and donate to law enforcement agencies around the nation to assist them in funding and or maintaining peer support and wellness programs for their officers. These programs are crucial for the physical and mental well-being of hardworking law enforcement officers and agencies across the country. Check out Blue Badge Coffee Company at bluebadgecoffee.com. Support a great company that is supporting our law enforcement. Get yourself some merch. Get yourself some coffee. I've had their coffee. I wear their merch. They don't pay me to do this. I just love supporting good companies and good brands that are supporting our law enforcement community. So check out bluebadgecoffee.com for more information about their products. And number two, if you're looking at my shirt on the YouTube video, you see that I'm representing the Overwatch Collective, another great organization. The Overwatch Collective is a 501c3 nonprofit and podcast funding therapy sessions and supporting mental health among first responders, military, and their families. They're providing a ton of therapeutic services for officers around the country who need those resources. You can donate to the Overwatch Collective online. You can get some merch and support their mission that way. You can check out their podcast. I'll be on it real soon. Both of those companies are doing great things for our law enforcement, first responder, military communities, and I just want to make sure to give them a shout out at the beginning of every episode so that you guys know who is standing up for you. So getting back to the topic of today's episode, bread and circuses, let me start you out with a quote from Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday is, of course, the modern day Stoic author who kind of contextualizes and shares a lot of the Stoics. He says, a weak mind must be constantly entertained and stimulated. A strong mind can occupy itself and, more important, be still and vigilant in moments that demand it. So bread and circuses, presidential debates, the entire media cycle around everything involving the presidential race. It feels like it never ends, right? It feels like we're in like the 1000th month of 2016. It just never ends. And it never ends because the media no longer operates the way that it used to. You can learn a little bit more about this if you read the book Hate, Inc. by Matt Taibbi. He talks a lot about the kind of balkanization of the media, how news used to be a loss leader. It used to be something that wasn't intended as a profit stream for different media corporations. It was their television shows. It was whatever was on after the news that was generating the ad revenue that was generating money. News was seen as an informational thing, and it wasn't intended to be narrative based and driven in a way that got people to tune in. But that's all changed in the last decade to decade and a half, and we're seeing that play out right now in front of us. And what happens a lot of the time, in my opinion, is what's old is new again. And this sort of brings us back to the Roman Empire. You see, there's this phrase in Latin. It's Panem et circenses, and it's a Latin phrase that roughly translates to bread and circuses in English. And in ancient Rome, what that represented was the political strategy that was employed by emperors and politicians to keep the population compliant. You see, the government would distribute free bread to citizens, and it would organize lavish spectacles and entertainment. That's the circuses part of it, right? So we're talking about chariot races, gladiator fights, theatrical performances in grand arenas like the Colosseum. And by providing these basic necessities and then diverting attention with extravagant shows, rulers aim to prevent social unrest and maintain their power. Now, if you're nodding along as you're listening to this, it's because a lot of this sounds familiar, right? We are incentivized to tune into the gladiatorial combat that is our politics, that is our day-to-day news cycle, that is the constant outrage cycle that's designed to put us into different camps and get us to tune into whatever is next so that they can shove the advertisements down our throats so they can sell us whatever it is that they want to sell. They keep us perpetually outraged, so we're tuning in. A lot of that is a very similar concept to what was going on in ancient Rome. You see, we live in an era where bread and circuses are the order of the day. And the moment we wake up until we fall asleep at night, we are bombarded with spectacle. We stream music, we stream podcasts, we scroll social media for entertainment, we tune into cable, we tune into myriad streaming apps or sports, movies, shows. We scour internet blogs, we read news sites, we have magazines that we thumb through, we get email, we're on newsletter lists, we get constant information, constant updates, and even at live events like ball games or concerts, if you do a cursory scan of the crowd, you're going to reveal hundreds of attendees not even paying attention to the thing that they paid hundreds of dollars to attend because they're staring into their smartphone instead of taking in their surroundings. You see, as members of the sheepdog class, which we all are, a distracted society is a dangerous society. And in a distracted society, a society constantly distracted by bread and circuses, we have to be the bulwark against this behavior. We cannot surrender our situational awareness to the siren song of overstimulation. That is where mindfulness practices come into play. That is where doing things like breath work, doing things like journaling, doing things like meditation, doing things like visualization, doing those sort of mindfulness practices and exercises can become powerful tools in our arsenal as first responders to help us empower our mind to occupy itself, and more importantly, to stay vigilant. Because when we're distracted by the extravagant shows, by the bread and circuses, we're not paying attention to all the chaos and all the other things that are happening around us. We're not paying attention to the pot starting to boil over. And if anyone needs to be paying attention to that, it's those of us who are in a position to maintain order in times of chaos. You see, like any other muscle, you have to be disciplined in how you train your mind if you want to rely on it in moments that matter. So taking this time to reduce the distractions, to reduce the circuses is super important. We're kicking off the presidential campaign season tonight. That is silly season for law enforcement. We're going to have debates. We're going to have conventions. We're going to have all the things that happen in the summer leading up to a presidential election. Think back to 2016 when we saw a lot of BLM protests. We saw cops getting ambushed in East Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We saw cops getting ambushed and assassinated in New York City. We saw cops getting assassinated and ambushed in Dallas, Texas. We saw a lot of crazy things happening that law enforcement was subjected to. Think back 4 years ago to the summer of 2020, $2 billion worth of property damage in the riots that summer and everything that's occurred. And look at what's happening right now in 2024. Look around us. We have just this past weekend, as I'm recording this, we just saw what was essentially a modern day pogrom in Los Angeles. We had Hamas supporters beating down Jewish attendees at a synagogue and riots in the street. Los Angeles PD having to respond to it. A lot of bad stuff happens in these lead ups to these political events, to these elections these days. And it tends to be the worst in the summer leading up to a presidential election. We haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg yet, folks. So right now is the time. If you're a first responder, if you're in law enforcement, if you're in a fire department, if you're EMT, if you're a medical responder, whatever it is, and you are listening to this podcast, the time to start thinking about this stuff isn't a week from now or 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. The time to start preparing yourself is now, because we are already seeing the pot start to boil. And if past is predicate, this is going to be another one of those summers where things get crazy. So keep your eye on the ball. So here's my journal prompt. It's really an action prompt today. What I would like you to do today, if you're listening to this today, is turn off your damn cell phone. aside from emergency contacts, and give yourself a little bit of a breather. There's going to be plenty of time for the outrage, plenty of time for whatever is said on that debate stage, whatever side of the political aisle you fall on, or if you're like me, if you're on an island unto yourself, irritated with the entire spectacle. There's going to be plenty of time to take all that in, but don't take it in right now. Give yourself a social media cleanse. Give yourself a technology cleanse. Get your mind right, get your head right, because we need you, the sheepdog class, to be mindful, to be vigilant, to be prepared, and to be aware, to take care of yourselves and to take care of others as the circus rolls on down the road towards November. That's what I got for you today, folks. Tune back in tomorrow. It'll be our fourth and last episode of the week. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. If you want to support it, you can pick up a copy of my book, In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. Anywhere you get your books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc., etc. You can download it on Kindle or Nook. You can pick up a paperback edition, which I love because you can take notes, you can highlight, you can go back, read it again and again and again. That's what I would love for you to do. But if you do pick up a copy, please go and give it a review on Amazon.com. Number two, you can subscribe to the Substack, the Stoic Responder, for free. On that page, you can get the podcast delivered to your email and get my weekly newsletters with Stoic leadership and personal development tips directly into your inbox. Totally free, is a resource for you. And finally, if you want to support this podcast, the easiest thing that you can do is like, share, and subscribe so that others can learn about what we are doing here and get some of these Stoic mindset lessons as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Until next time, until Friday, you are out of roll. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, out of roll.